sometimes when I'm in the design studio, because our warehouse is beautiful and has really high ceilings. So late at night, around 7 o'clock, if I'm like building, I will just sing and you know what? It is my little gift.
Oh my gosh, you need to share that moment. I can see the commercial now for Cory Christopher Designs where you're belting out some beautiful opera and we all get drunk on you.
Well, that's very kind. But you know what was part of my realization around this, which was interesting? The voice doesn't mature till you're 36, 37 as a lyric tenor. So I'm a lyric tenor.
Okay.
So then I was like, well, what am I gonna do for 10 years? Like, I'm not gonna wait around for this voice to mature. There's a lot to do. There's things to happen. So I was like, well, we'll just put that off to the side. So like maybe one day, but for me, it also, travel actually is really challenging on my voice.
Oh.
And so to it's stressed out, not just stressed, but it gets really dry very quickly. And so to travel around the world, if I was going to be, because I'm only going to be successful at things,
of course.
then I would have to come up with some routine, and then I just was like, yeah, you know what, I'll find something else to do.
So that was a big moment. We'll shout that whole opera career because
Yeah.
Oh my God, most people dream. We're just gonna shelve the opera talent for now, and we're gonna go home.
We're gonna move home because.
Seriously, is that the realization? You missed home?
Oh, it was. So I've never really told anybody this. So the first semester, I was so homesick. Oh my God, I would cry. I didn't know what, I was like, I'm supposed to be strong and brave and I'm supposed to love this and this is supposed to be, nope, I was a baby crying. And so exam period came and I love Christmas a lot. And so I was so we were supposed to be I decorated my entire dorm. I fully wallpapered everything with Christmas wrap because like I needed to feel at home. And so, but finally I was like, and this was the days when flights were very, very affordable, like $89. So I had a week off, so I flew home. Because I was like, I have to be at home, and I decorated, and I just realized there were so many things I missed. Partly because I had accelerated my growth as an individual very quickly. You know, you go to high school, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm understanding who I am as a person. And then I'm going off to the world, there's nothing here for me. But what I realized is there was stuff here for me. There was, a beautiful farm that I desperately missed. I missed the nature. I missed seeing my parents. I missed being connected to my parents because they were so pivotal in my growth as a child to now just forgo them in some sense. I still had more to learn from them. I had more to understand from them. And this might sound silly, I didn't want to move to Toronto and be a starving artist. And I didn't want to be a super small fish in a big pond. Because I knew that wouldn't be the environment for me to excel because I was still learning. Even if I had continued a career in theater, I needed more time to hone that skill. Kids who had been doing it since the age of 2 and tap dancing, I was not that child. And that gave me a different perspective, which was a positive in many ways. But from a sheer talent and technique, I needed more time. And so I had talked to my professors. I was actually going to go do a master's in performance studies and go do a PhD. And that was about my second year. See, I started planning early in my second year of university. And they're like, you need to take a break and you shouldn't go to any design schools. Because I started to show a strong interest in design. They're like, they'll mold you too much and it will never be what you need it to be. And I was like, it was such a great amount of advice. And at the time I was like, oh, you just don't need, fine, I'll listen to you maybe. And then realized after the time I was like, no, I need to move home. I don't want to go back to school right now. It's challenging, it's intense, especially for someone who puts a little extra added pressure on themselves to achieve. I needed the break.
So you went home and how did you feel?
It felt weird because I had built this friend circle in particular that was so tight-knit. I'd seen them every day. But then I sort of got over, I was depressed over the summer when I moved back. My stuff arrived, I remember that. I had 15 boxes of books and my mother was like, we are never shipping books across this country again. They are so expensive to ship because I kept every single book. Because for me, going to Queens was like this knowledge hub, oh my God, this exists in the world. I understood what wealth was, I understood what culture was, even in that small sense. And so I sort of wanted to bring that back. That was my means so I could flip through those books to be like, okay, I'm not connected. And then I just jumped into my parents' parents' business. You know, they had a garden center and tree farm, and so I started working. And, you know, started to be like, what am I gonna do? Like, maybe I'll do some, I performed in the Fringe with a guerrilla opera company called Mercury Opera.
Yes.
And so that was fun and exciting, but I was like, the spark's gone a little bit. It needs a break. I still studied voice while I was here to keep it fresh. And then was like, one day, you know, I'm really good at this design thing. Why don't we start a company?
This design. Yeah, I love the way that you just thought this design thing.
Design thing, right?
Right, so why don't we start a company? So Cory Christopher, the designs is the
Yeah, designs. But I at first just went by Cory Christopher.
Right.
Why define anything?
Right. don't, because you
I
never
had
know
no clue what I was doing. Was the like to some extent I didn't have a clue. I knew I wanted to create, and I love the holiday season. I love seasonality, and so I was like, okay, well, design. Maybe I'll be an interior designer. You know, I watched HGTV. I love trading space. I could be a designer, right? So full of myself, I think, to some extent, because I think you have to be brazen to take those leaps. But I knew that I needed to do something creative. I knew I loved design because it was a refinement. It was, you know, taking talents and putting these mediums together and creating something for people. And then I knew I wanted it to be something where I could be imaginative with what I created.
So how did that go? What was the experience like, and what did you discover right away? Was it the right path? What were the roadblocks? What scared you?
I think it was all about adjustments in the beginning, because I had thought that I wanted to be an interior designer. And then I started doing landscape design on the side, because people would be like, oh, well, you know everything about trees, you should start designing. And so, like, the first of my few projects, which still exist, were interesting. With interior design, I realized I didn't like that the project lasted forever and ever, and it never stopped, because once you were done, there was something always to add.
Right.
It didn't have the finalness I needed. Like, I needed it to be over and done and move on to the next thing. Because my brain is constantly thinking creatively, and so I would reimagine that space. And I realized that in Edmonton, that might not be my path. And I felt like I needed maybe some more schooling. I worked with an interior designer for a year, which was an amazing eye-opening experience. I learned so much about space and how to put things together, but I was like, this isn't quite the right fit. But what I did know is I loved decorating for Christmas. So I did a couple Christmas tours and, you know, volunteered my time and got involved with the Festival of Trees as well. And so that started to hone in on some of that, to be like, okay, I like this. Well, what about spring? What about this? And it honestly was this fascinating progression for me, because then someone said you should do weddings. And I was like, really? Okay, like, it's a space? Sure. I remember the first one, oh, it's so hideous, I hid those photos. Like, I hung like these, like, it was just so unique, it was so fresh for me in terms of if you were to look at what I was thinking then versus now and what I'm able to create now. But it was fun to also have, you know, no holds bar, you were fresh, you were new, I was willing to do anything. And so, you know, started taking that journey and being like, well, let's do some planters, let's do this. I knew that it was important to really get the name out there, and that's when I started doing some more TV, you know, and started being in segments and was asked to do a couple, and then it started to become something quite regular, and I really love that. I love being able to share. And I think that's what I've realized through design. It's about creating these beautiful moments, experiences, whether it's a floral arrangement, whether it's an entire wedding or an event, but it's about the experience that it is. And that has been so powerful to understand that it can exist in different sizes, and it can exist in different shapes. And so that was, you know, part of the incubus of that incubation process, to be like, okay, how am I going to create this? How am I going to do this? And it was like a lot of trial and error. It is not as pretty as my Instagram looks. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of hard effort. It still is. It will always be. If it's not, then I shouldn't be doing it. I really believe that, because it's a constant growth. It's taught me so much as well. It's taught me to say no to things that I wasn't, you know, necessarily as passionate about. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey as an entrepreneur, especially an artistic entrepreneur. Because sometimes my brain's over here, and that price tag, whoa boy. And then you go like, this is reality, Cory. But that's part of the creative challenge. How do you make those worlds exist together?
And that's what I often wonder, because you walk into this podcast and you bring the most stunning bouquet of flowers that of course you designed yourself, and I look at all the flowers and they're purple and yellow and hydrangeas, and it's absolutely gorgeous, but I think you see the world through a different way. Like, I could never come up with this in a million years. So when you look at something and you create, give us what you think of. Like, how did this and how do big beautiful planters take shape in your mind? Do you visualize them, or what do you do? Do you work with what you have at your fingertips? How does that work?
It's actually all three, which I think is the beauty of the process. I'm a very organic designer. And for the longest time, I've been overly apologetic about that, because sometimes that means that I can seem extremely chaotic and I can seem like I don't know what I'm doing. And not in a negative way. It's just that my brain likes to connect the dots. And so, like you said, I like to touch and I like to feel. So if I can shop for something, I'm much happier, because I like to see combos together. I like to be inspired by elements that can come and be fostered together. Mm-hmm. That doesn't always work though when you're doing larger events and stuff. So for me, I've started to create boundaries for myself. I need frameworks. I need ideas to be within certain boxes so that I can ensure that we can have an experience that allows me, my organicness, to do the best job possible and take the design to the next level, but for a client who actually would like to know a little bit. And I think that's an important balance. I really do like to create things in the moment because I get inspired. I'm very much a spatial designer. I need to walk the space several times. I need to sit in the middle of it. I know I sound like some crazy, but for me, I need to understand the space. And what is so fascinating is, some people I remember moving back to Alberta, and people were like, so what are you going to do with that drama degree? And I'm like, well, now I say that actually launched the entire company and allows me to do what I do today, because I can articulately speak about what I do, because I had to stand up in front of a class every week and recite Shakespeare and monologues and do crazy things. I learned in design classes about lighting and all of those components, right, that have to come together and flourish. So what I've realized is it's all of those components coming together to create an experience, which is where you observe all of the spatial components. I look a lot at magazines, I look at books, I look at all of those engaging components to be inspired, to find new ways to create things magical, and then allow that to come. I love a good problem from a client. Mm-hmm. I always, this is what I want, and then I'm like, okay, well, how do we solve that? The more walls I have, the better I can often design.
What has been the biggest challenge for you as an entrepreneur in growing this business?